I'm Raymond, I'm 53. I was diagnosed in 1977 with type 1 diabetes. I was only 16, but it was my best friend's mother that found out when she noticed me going to the toilet a lot and asked me, was I always thirsty? And I said yes. And she said, here's a jar, put some urine in it and I'll test it. And it was positive. Diagnosed with type 1, stabilised in a major Melbourne hospital and educated, and then sent home after a week and resumed my life. Well, they did make it very plain to me at the hospital where I was stabilised that I did not have a choice. That if I ignored the insulin regime and the diet regime, I would pay a big price. And they explained that 3 days without insulin could be death. My oldest brother had a phobia of needles. I didn't have a choice like that. He used to watch me inject myself with insulin and he'd run out of the room. You had the sword of Damocles hanging over your head. You did not have a choice. You had to go on. Naturally, when you're 16, a lot of it doesn't sink in, and for 20 years it was poorly managed, which has left me with quite a lot of complications. At that stage in your life, the last thing you want to be doing is worrying about all that's involved in managing type 1 diabetes. And a lot of it, you take it in your own sort to just ignore it, disregard it. You don't see the importance of it. The management regime that was in practice those days was very insufficient for managing it. It's not hard to just treat it very lightly, which has serious consequences later on. I was given guidelines, which I followed. I also did a lot of my own research. I was also a very energetic, hard-working young bloke, cutting firewood, gold mining, shoveling gravel, digging. I've always been a hard manual labourer. I feel that helped me enormously. Now, 38 years later, I'm still in one piece, which is something to be said for that. And my vision is actually 20/20 in both eyes. But both my kidneys suffered to the point where 4 years ago they virtually shut down. So I was on home dialysis for almost 3 years, and the renal doctor that treated me at the same major hospital where I was stabilised in 1977, he put me on the transplant list for a kidney, and almost 2 years ago I got the transplant. My transplant's been highly successful. It was a very well-matched kidney from the start, and the transplant team that did the procedure were absolutely incredible, fantastic. They're amongst the world's best, and I'm very fortunate and extremely grateful. I've got a lot of nerve damage in the extremities. I've got very little feeling in my legs from the middle of this leg down. The feet virtually feel nothing, but I feel they're always cold, and I have to heat the house to a pretty high temperature to keep the feet comfortable. The fingers get very cold. I've got high blood pressure, high cholesterol, but they're managed, they're treated and managed. The circulatory system's extensively damaged. But apart from that, I've probably escaped well from complications. But I cope. You learn to just adjust. 38 years ago, it was hard, very hard, and a lot of guesswork. And a lot of the issues were very poorly understood and communicated to the patient. The patient's knowledge has increased enormously in that 38 years that I've had type 1. It's come from virtually zilch to now there's no excuse for any diabetic not to do the right thing. And it's so easy to keep it well controlled with home glucose monitoring, the new improved insulins, the better dietary regimes. It's so easy now. It's a non-issue. So if you're diagnosed with type 1 or 2, and there's no excuse at all for not complying and living a normal, healthy life. I think the diabetic educators are one of the key pillars of strengths for all diabetics. Their knowledge, their good way of explaining issues to the patient, and the time they put in per patient. It's fantastic. They've been one of my greatest strengths. Yeah, it's no longer the death sentence it used to be. I know a lot of people only have type 1 diabetes for 20 years and they've got toes amputated, even feet and legs amputated. They've lost their vision. I do consider myself very fortunate. Some of it's my doing from being such a hard-working, energetic person. I eat quite well and healthy food, and I do abide by the guidelines that are given me. I'm actually a very good cook. A lot of my recipes are what my mother taught me, and I'm more than happy with home cooking. I don't like junk food and fast food, so never have. All I can say is the medical people from day one have always been outstanding in their treatment of me, and I could never ever find fault or complaint. Absolutely fantastic people, and I'm extremely grateful. My main plan is to get a driver's licence again. Well, initially 25 years ago, my doctor sent me to an ophthalmologist in Collins Street in Melbourne for a checkup of the retina, and he noticed unusual vessels growing on the retina, and he did a fluoroscreen angiography, I think it is, where they inject a fluorescent dye into your arm, into your vein, and then they take photos of the hemorrhaging retina in your eyes. And it did do damage to my peripheral vision, but it's never been an issue with my daily life, and I drove my car till 4 years ago with no issues at all, no accidents, no traffic infringements. And then all of a sudden I'm unfit to drive, they say, and suspended my licence. And that's a very bitter issue with me, that I had restricted peripheral vision for 23 years without an issue with the driving. Then all of a sudden I'm unfit to drive because of some bureaucrat. Driving authorities are focusing on all diabetics. It's left me in a very, very bad position given where I live, and the system has let me down terribly, and they won't listen to common sense or reasoning. They just slam the door in your face. When you're in your teenage years and that's thrust upon you, that you've just been diagnosed, it comes as a major shock, a major change in your life. It takes a lot of adjusting to, and because you're so full of life in your teenage years, you're not going to take it all to heart like you should. So it is an issue with young people. I feel it was for me, and I feel there would be a lot of young people out there recently diagnosed with type 1 that would find it very hard to adjust. I feel to be here today, if this will help someone cope and adjust and follow the guidelines, then it's all worth it. And that's my objective. Stick to all the directions that you're given as far as blood glucose monitoring, dietary issues, exercise, and it's not that big a deal. it's not the end of the world at all. It's a new beginning.